The radio screamed before I even reached the truck. Not static. Not feedback. A man was breathing into the microphone. Slow. Uneven. Like he'd been running for miles. Then he whispered 4 words that every Yellowstone ranger is trained to report, but never repeat. Rule 6 was wrong. The transmission cut off. Every radio on the station went silent. Not disconnected. Silent. Even the usual background hiss vanished, as if someone had muted the entire mountain. For about 5 seconds, nobody moved. Then every emergency light inside the ranger station turned red. No alarm. No siren. Just the lights. My supervisor, Dale Mercer, looked at me from across the room with an expression I'd never seen on him before. Not fear. Recognition. He quietly set his coffee on the counter and said, "Lock every exterior door." Nobody asked why. We all moved. The steel shutters slammed over the windows. Electronic locks clicked into place. Someone killed the building's main lights until only the emergency strips along the floor remained. Outside, tourists kept walking through the parking lot, laughing, taking pictures of elk grazing near the tree line. They had no idea every ranger inside the station had just stopped breathing. Dale walked to a gray filing cabinet I'd worked around for nearly 3 years. I'd never seen it opened. He unlocked it with 2 different keys. Then a thumbprint. Then another key. Inside wasn't paperwork. It was a thick black binder. Across the front, in faded white letters, were 3 words. Contingency 6 Protocol. He looked directly at me. "You've got the northern boundary tonight." I was supposed to patrol Madison. Not anymore. "What happened?" He hesitated just long enough to make my stomach tighten. "I don't know yet." Then he added something worse. "But someone else did." People think working at Yellowstone is mostly traffic jams, lost hikers, and tourists trying to pet bison. Most days. They're right. The park is enormous. Nearly 3,500 square miles of forests, rivers, canyons, mountains, thermal basins, and wilderness stretching across Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. You can drive for hours and still feel like you're the only person alive. That's part of why I took the job. Before Yellowstone, I served 6 years as an Army combat medic. After getting out, I wanted somewhere quiet. Somewhere real. Nature has rules. Animals have patterns. Forests make sense. Or at least, I thought they did. Yellowstone cured me of that idea within my first month. Not because of bears. Not because of wolves. Not because of the geothermal hazards. Those are predictable. It's the things the public never hears about. Things that never appear in incident reports. Things that don't officially exist. Every new ranger receives a handbook. Most of it covers exactly what you'd expect. Wildlife safety. Emergency response. Search and rescue. Weather. Fire protocols. Then, after orientation ends, your supervisor hands you something else. Not officially. No signatures. No records. Usually after everyone's gone home. Mine came in a plain manila envelope. Inside was a single laminated page. At the top, someone had typed, "Field Rules, Northern District." There were 6 rules. The first 5 sounded strange enough to make me think it was some kind of initiation prank. Rule 1. If you hear your name called from the tree line after sunset, do not answer until you've confirmed visual identification. Rule 2. If an animal refuses to cross the road for longer than 60 seconds, turn around immediately. Rule 3. Never investigate a lone child's laughter after dark unless another ranger confirms the source. Rule 4. If every bird goes silent at once, return to your vehicle without running. Rule 5. Never remain near a thermal basin after midnight if the steam begins moving against the wind. I laughed. Actually laughed. Dale didn't. He watched me finish reading. Then he took the page back before I could fold it. "Where's Rule 6? I asked. He stared at me for several seconds. "You don't need it." "What does that mean?" It means if you ever need Rule 6. He stopped. Then quietly said, You probably won't survive long enough to use it. I figured he was messing with the rookie. For almost 2 years. Nothing happened. Nothing I couldn't explain. Until the disappearances started. Officially, people vanish in national parks every year. Accidents. Exposure. Falls. Wildlife. Wrong turns. Most are eventually found. Some aren't. The public sees statistics. We see patterns. Patterns management insists aren't patterns. The first case that bothered me involved a wildlife photographer named Ethan Brooks. He checked in at dawn. Experienced. Satellite beacon. GPS. Detailed route. Everything by the book. At 4:20 that afternoon, dispatch received a call from his wife. She hadn't heard from him. Search teams went out before sunset. We found his backpack. His camera. His boots. All neatly arranged beside a creek. No blood. No tracks leading away. No signs of struggle. Just placed there. As though he'd calmly undressed and vanished barefoot into 40-degree wilderness. The official report blamed hypothermia. Nobody believed it. Especially after we reviewed his camera. The memory card contained hundreds of normal wildlife photos. Elk. Foxes. Steam vents. Bears. Then, the final 6 pictures. Each taken exactly 1 minute apart. The first showed the forest. Nothing unusual. The second showed the same trees. Except every shadow had shifted. The third. Every tree was leaning toward the camera. Not fallen. Leaning. Like they were listening. The fourth picture was blurry. As if the camera had shaken violently. The fifth. Still makes me sick. Because standing between 2 lodgepole pines, almost perfectly hidden, was someone wearing a National Park Service Ranger uniform. Our uniform. Flat hat. Green shirt. Duty belt. Everything. The face wasn't visible. Just darkness beneath the brim. The timestamp showed Ethan had taken that picture at 2:13 p.m. I checked my patrol logs. Every ranger assigned to that sector had GPS records proving they were over 20 miles away. Whoever stood in that photograph wasn't one of us. The 6th and final image contained nothing. Just empty forest. Except, when technicians enhanced it later, they found Ethan. Nearly 300 yards away. Standing completely still. Facing away from the camera. Looking at someone, or something, we couldn't see. That investigation disappeared. Literally. Every digital copy vanished from the server. Printed reports went missing. The memory card was confiscated by 2 men who didn't work for the Park Service. No names. No insignias. Just federal credentials flashed too quickly to read. When I asked Dale who they were, he answered without looking up from his paperwork. The kind of people who only show up after Rule 5. I frowned. There isn't supposed to be anything after Rule 5. He finally looked at me. For a moment, he seemed like he was deciding whether to tell me something. Instead, he simply said, There wasn't. Then he walked away. I didn't understand what he meant. Not then. But standing inside that locked ranger station tonight, with emergency lights bathing the hallway in crimson, listening to the impossible silence outside, holding a black binder labeled Contingency 6 Protocol, I realized something that turned my blood cold. Nobody had ever said there were only 6 rules. Only that we'd been allowed to know 5. And somewhere beyond the station walls, someone had just died trying to tell us the 6th one was wrong. The first thing Dale did after opening the binder wasn't read it. He counted us. 6 rangers. 1 dispatcher. 1 maintenance supervisor. No one else. He looked around the room twice before speaking. Phones stay off. Nobody argued. If your family calls, they wait. Still no arguments. If anyone knocks on this station tonight. He paused. You verify them through 3 methods. Someone asked. 3? Face. Voice. Badge number. And if they fail 1? Dale didn't hesitate. You don't open the door. The maintenance supervisor frowned. What if it's law enforcement? They don't come here at 2 in the morning. And if they do? They already know the procedure. That was the end of the conversation. Nobody questioned him again. You have to understand something about Yellowstone. People imagine it as one giant park. It isn't. To the public, it's hiking trails, geysers, wildlife, and scenic drives. To the people who work there, it's a collection of districts that feel like separate countries. Ours can separate one ranger station from another. Thousands of acres lie between patrol routes. Entire valleys have no cell service. Radio reception disappears without warning. Storms roll over mountains so quickly they seem alive. You can drive 20 miles without seeing another vehicle. At night, those 20 miles feel like 200. Most visitors leave before sunset. Employees don't? That's when the park becomes something different. The roads empty. The thermal basins breathe louder. The forests stop sounding like forests. Every experienced ranger notices it eventually. Nobody talks about it during orientation. The old-timers wait. If you last 6 months, they'll ask a strange question over coffee. Ever feel like the park watches back? The first time someone asked me that, I laughed. 6 months later, I stopped laughing. There are 2 kinds of rules in Yellowstone. The official ones are printed on signs. Stay on boardwalks. Don't feed wildlife. Keep your distance from bears. Those rules keep tourists alive. The unofficial rules. Keep rangers employed. Or buried. Most new hires hear rumors before they're trusted with the real list. You'll catch fragments in break rooms. Conversations that stop when you walk in. Someone mentioning the whistles. Another ranger saying, that wasn't a wolf. Nobody ever explains. One winter night, I found an old maintenance worker named Gus sitting alone in the vehicle garage. He'd worked Yellowstone longer than I'd been alive. 41 years. His hands shook so badly he spilled coffee every time he lifted the cup. He noticed me staring. You think it's age? I shrugged. I didn't say anything. You didn't have to. He smiled. It's not Parkinson's. What is it? He looked toward the open garage door. The snow outside reflected moonlight so brightly it almost hurt to look at. I've heard the mountain answer back. Then he changed the subject. Like he'd said too much. That became another pattern. People who'd worked here a long time all carried the same habit. They'd begin telling you something. Then stop. As if remembering they weren't supposed to. About 8 months into my career, I got my first solo overnight patrol. Northern District. Late October. Temperature just above freezing. Clear skies. The kind of night where every sound carries forever. Dispatch called around 11:40 p.m. Unit 12. Go ahead. We've got motion alarms near Tower Ridge. Animals? Unknown. Camera? No visual. I checked the map. The sensor sat along an old service road no longer open to the public. Mostly maintenance access. No campgrounds. No hiking traffic. No reason for anyone to be there. I acknowledged the call and drove north. The farther I went, the darker everything became. People who've never been that deep into Yellowstone don't understand true darkness. There's no city glow. No distant highways. No neighborhoods. Just mountains swallowing every bit of light beyond your headlights. The road eventually narrowed to gravel. My truck bounced over frozen ruts until I reached the maintenance gate. Locked. Exactly as it should have been. No tire tracks. No footprints. Yet the motion sensor had triggered 4 times. I unlocked the gate. Drove another mile. Nothing. The forest stood perfectly still. Even the wind seemed absent. Then I noticed something strange. My headlights weren't reflecting off animal eyes. Usually at night you'll catch deer, coyotes, foxes, owls, Something. That night, nothing looked back. I remember thinking the woods felt vacant. Like every living thing had quietly stepped aside. Dispatch crackled. Unit 12. Go. You still moving? Affirmative. Long pause. You've been stationary for 11 minutes. I looked down at my speedometer. 25 miles an hour. I glanced behind me. The gravel road stretched into darkness. Ahead, more road. The truck hadn't stopped once. I'm driving now. No, you're not. What? Our GPS hasn't moved. I felt the first real chill of the night. Not from the cold. I looked at the dashboard clock. 11:53. The radio clock. 11:53. My wristwatch. 12:04. 3 different times. Before I could ask dispatch another question. Every clock reset. Midnight. Exactly. At the same second. Then the radio went dead. I decided to turn around. Simple. Textbook procedure. No communications. Equipment malfunction. Return to base. Except, the road behind me wasn't there. Not destroyed. Not blocked. Gone. The headlights illuminated trees where the road had been. Dense lodgepole pines packed shoulder to shoulder. I actually got out of the truck. Walked 20 yards. Touched one of the trees. Solid. Cold. Old. No sign a road had ever existed. I climbed back into the vehicle. Heart pounding harder than I'd admit. I shifted into drive. The truck rolled forward. The GPS map spun twice. Then corrected itself. According to the screen, I was now driving across Yellowstone Lake. In October. 20 miles from water. I shut the GPS off. Some problems don't get better by staring at them. That's something military training teaches you. Focus on what you can verify. The truck. The fuel. The flashlight. The rifle locked behind my seat. The emergency beacon. Things I could touch. Then, I heard knocking. 3 taps. From the cargo bed. Knock. 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 Not loud. Polite. Like someone asking permission to come inside. I checked the mirrors. Nothing. Another 3 knocks. Exactly the same rhythm. Military training also teaches pattern recognition. Animals don't knock. Branches don't knock. People don't usually hide in truck beds in freezing weather. I kept driving. The knocking followed every 30 seconds. Always 3 taps. Never 4. Never 2. Exactly 3. After 5 minutes, it stopped. Relief lasted maybe 10 seconds. Because then dispatch came back. Only, it wasn't dispatch. It was my own voice. Unit 12. I froze. The speaker crackled again. Perfect imitation. My breathing. My cadence. Even the slight southern accent I'd picked up during my army years. Then my voice said something I had never spoken. Don't let it learn your face. Silence. Then, another version of my voice. Closer. Calmer. It's already behind you. Every instinct I had screamed not to look in the rearview mirror. So naturally, I looked. The cargo bed was empty. But the rear window wasn't reflecting me anymore. It showed someone sitting in the driver's seat, wearing my uniform, hands on the wheel, watching me, smile growing wider. I spun around so fast I nearly dislocated my shoulder. The driver's seat was empty. I was alone. When I looked back at the mirror, my reflection had returned. Almost. It took me another few seconds to realize what was wrong. My reflection was blinking. I wasn't. When I finally found the ranger station again, dawn was breaking. At least I thought it was dawn. The clock on my dashboard insisted only 42 minutes had passed. My wristwatch claimed nearly 6 hours. Dispatch logs showed I'd been missing for 9 hours and 18 minutes. Search teams had already been preparing to come after me. Dale didn't ask about the truck. Didn't ask about the GPS. Didn't ask why my hands were shaking. He asked exactly one question. Did you answer anything? No. Did you follow any voices? No. Did you look back after the third knock? I hesitated. His expression changed immediately. You looked. I nodded. He closed his eyes. For a long moment neither of us spoke. Finally he reached into his desk drawer and removed the laminated rule sheet I'd seen during orientation. He placed it on the desk. For the first time. He flipped it over. There was writing on the back. One sentence. Typed in faded black ink. There is no safe response after the third knock. Survival depends on whether it remembers you. Before I could ask what that meant, Dale quietly took the card back, locked it away again, and said something that stayed with me ever since. You weren't supposed to see the other driver. I stared at him. The other what? He met my eyes. Then looked away. Neither was I. And for the first time since I'd become a Yellowstone Ranger, I realized the people training us weren't following rules they understood. They were following rules they had survived. I didn't sleep after that patrol. I tried. I drove home, shut every curtain in my apartment, turned my phone off, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that rearview mirror. Not the thing smiling at me. The timing. It had blinked. Not with me. After. Like it had watched what I did first. Then copied it. That bothered me more than anything else. It wasn't pretending to be me. It was learning. By noon, I'd convinced myself exhaustion had done the rest. Sleep deprivation can play tricks on anyone. I'd spent years as an army medic. I'd seen hallucinations brought on by stress, dehydration, and trauma. The human brain fills gaps. It invents patterns. It protects itself. That explanation lasted until I reported for my next shift. Dale handed me my incident report. I frowned. I haven't written it yet. You don't need to. He slid the paperwork across the desk. Every field had already been completed. Vehicle number. Patrol route. Timestamps. Weather conditions. Equipment status. Even my signature. My signature. Perfect. I stared at it. I didn't sign this. I know. Who did? Dale didn't answer. Instead, he flipped to the last page. Under observations, someone had typed a single sentence. Subject maintained visual contact. Imprint possible. No department letterhead. No agency name. No case number. Just that. What does imprint mean? Dale quietly removed the report from my hands. You weren't supposed to read that page. You just handed it to me. I know. He fed the entire report into the shredder. Not just my copy. The original. Without another word. For the next 3 weeks. Nothing happened. At least, nothing obvious. The park settled back into its routine. Traffic jams caused by bison. Lost campers. Minor injuries. Search and rescue drills. Normal life. But the veteran rangers started watching me differently. Conversation stopped when I entered a room. People who joked with me for months suddenly became polite. Distant. One afternoon, Ranger Melissa Grant walked into the equipment room while I was checking first aid kits. She closed the door behind her. Can I ask you something? Sure. Have you noticed anyone? She searched for the right word. Remembering conversations you never had? I laughed automatically. Then realized she wasn't smiling. What do you mean? She leaned against the shelf. Last week Dale thanked me for volunteering for overtime. Did you? No. He said we discussed it in his office. You didn't? I'd never been in his office. I shrugged. Maybe he mixed you up with somebody. That's what I thought. She looked directly at me. Until he repeated the conversation. What conversation? Word for word. My stomach tightened. He knew exactly what I'd supposedly said. She lowered her voice. The strange part? What? It sounded like something I would say. The reports continued. Tiny things. Nothing dramatic. A maintenance worker insisted he'd fueled a truck that had actually been in another district all day. A dispatcher remembered answering emergency calls that never appeared in the logs. A volunteer guide swore she'd spent an hour talking to a family who, according to security footage, had never entered the visitor center. Little cracks. Always small enough to dismiss individually. Collectively, they formed a pattern. People weren't losing memories. They were gaining extras. Then the wildlife changed. Yellowstone has rhythms. You learn them. Elk migrate through familiar valleys. Wolves patrol predictable territories. Bears emerge and den on schedules that make sense. One November morning, those rhythms broke. Dispatch received 17 separate reports from visitors. Bison. Hundreds of them. Standing perfectly still along the Grand Loop Road. Not grazing. Not sleeping. Facing north. Every single one. Traffic backed up for miles. Tourists climbed out of their vehicles to take pictures. The animals didn't react. They simply stood there, watching something no one else could see. Wildlife biologists arrived. No explanation. No illness. No predators. No environmental trigger. Then, exactly 19 minutes later, every bison turned around. At the same time. Not gradually. Instantly. As if following a command. Without making a sound, the entire herd walked into the forest. They ignored fences. Ignored roads. Ignored people. Some walked directly through dense stands of trees without changing course. We tracked them for nearly a mile. Then, their tracks stopped. Hundreds of sets of hoofprints simply ended. Fresh snow. No melting. No rocks. No frozen ground. Just hundreds of tracks ending in the middle of an open meadow. The official explanation blamed wind. Nobody who saw the sight believed it. Not even the scientists. That afternoon, Dale called a closed-door meeting. Attendance was mandatory. No phones. No laptops. No notes. He unfolded an old topographic map across the conference table. It wasn't the Yellowstone map we normally used. This one looked decades older. Handwritten markings covered it. Most were circles. Some had dates. Others had names crossed out in red ink. At the center of the map sat one enormous black X. No label. Just the X. Dale pointed toward it. Nobody enters this area. One of the newer rangers frowned. I've never seen that closure. You haven't. Why? Because it isn't public. What's there? Silence. Then Dale answered. Nothing you're authorized to know. Someone laughed nervously. So why show us? Because if your GPS ever routes you through here. He tapped the X. The GPS is wrong. I leaned closer. Is that where the disappearances happen? No. Then what's there? He looked at me for several seconds. The reason the disappearances happen. The room went completely still. After the meeting, I caught up with him outside. What aren't you telling us? He sighed. Too much. Start somewhere. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. When I was your age. He stopped himself. You ever hear of Ranger Alan Pierce? I shook my head. He trained half the supervisors working here today. What happened to him? He retired. The answer came too quickly. That's the official story. And unofficially? Dale stared toward the distant tree line. He walked into that restricted zone in 1998. And? He came back. That sounds like good news. No. Dale's voice dropped almost to a whisper. The man who came back knew all our names. I frowned. So? He never met any of us. A week later, I was assigned to inspect a fire lookout tower that hadn't been used in years. Routine maintenance. Or so I thought. The tower overlooked miles of untouched forest. No trails. No roads. Just endless wilderness. The climb took nearly 20 minutes. When I reached the top, I found the observation room exactly as maintenance had described. Dust. Broken windows. Old equipment. Nothing unusual. Until I noticed the logbook. The last recorded entry was dated 3 days earlier. Impossible. Nobody had been assigned here in years. I opened it. The handwriting was neat. Professional. The entry read: visibility good. Wind light. He's using the Western Valleys again. No signature. I flipped backward. Another entry. 2 days earlier. 3 copies today. One knew my wife's maiden name. Next page. Rule 4 no longer works above the tree line. Next. Don't trust anyone who arrives before their radio call. My pulse quickened. The dates continued. Daily entries. For weeks. Every page ended the same way. I still remember my real name. Then, without warning, the handwriting changed. The final entry filled only 1 line. He remembers it now too. Nothing after that. No goodbye. No explanation. Just empty pages. I immediately radioed dispatch. No response. I tried the secondary frequency. Nothing. Then the emergency channel. Silence. The same impossible silence from the night Rule 6 had been mentioned. Outside. The wind stopped. Not gradually. Instantly. The forest below became unnaturally still. No birds. No insects. No moving branches. I stepped to the window. Something moved between the trees. Too far away to identify. A person, maybe? Then another. Then another. Within seconds, I counted at least 20 figures emerging from the forest. All wearing National Park Service ranger uniforms. All walking in perfect silence. None of them looked up at the tower. They didn't need to. Because every single one of them had my face. And then, all at once, every radio in the tower crackled to life. Not with static. With voices. Dozens of them. Speaking over one another. Every voice belonged to someone I worked with. Every one of them repeated the exact same sentence. Don't let the 6th rule hear you, remember. The first voice I recognized was Melissa's. Not because of what she said. Because of the way she breathed between words. I'd spent enough shifts with her to know the rhythm of her speech. She always inhaled a little too sharply before asking a question. The radio on the lookout tower did exactly the same thing. Then it said, Ryan. My name. Softly. Almost kindly. You've been here too long. Every hair on my arm stood up. Melissa had the day off. She was over 60 miles away. I reached for the microphone before catching myself. Rule 1. If you hear your name called, confirm visual identification. I couldn't see anyone. Not Melissa. Not anyone alive. So I kept my mouth shut. The voice waited. Then chuckled. Only, Melissa didn't laugh like that. It was close. Close enough that someone who barely knew her would have believed it. But there was something mechanical about the timing. Like a recording stitched together from dozens of real conversations. Then another voice came through. Dale. Unit 12. Silence. Answer dispatch. Silence. Ryan. I gripped the radio tighter. His voice sounded exhausted. Urgent. If you don't answer, we're sending a helicopter. I almost replied. Almost. Then Dale said something he'd never say over an open frequency. We've already lost another ranger. That wasn't procedure. Deaths were never announced over unsecured channels. Not until next of kin had been notified. It was wrong. Just enough. I stepped away from the radio. The voices immediately stopped. All of them. As though they'd realized the test had failed. The figures below continued walking. 20. No. More. 30. 40. All in ranger uniforms. Every one wearing my face. Same height. Same build. Same patrol hat. Even the scar above my left eyebrow from a Humvee accident overseas. That scar wasn't visible unless you were close. These things had copied it perfectly. None of them looked up. Instead, they formed neat lines between the trees, standing shoulder to shoulder. Waiting. For nearly 5 minutes, nothing happened. Then one of them raised an arm. Not waving. Pointing. Directly at the tower. The others followed. One after another. Until every duplicate below stood perfectly still. Pointing at me. Then, without warning, every single one opened its mouth. Even from that distance, I could see it. Their jaws kept opening. Far wider than humanly possible. Too wide. Like something inside them had forgotten how a human face was supposed to work. No sound reached the tower. But I knew they were screaming. The emergency weather alarm activated. Not the radio. The actual weather siren mounted on the roof. A mechanical voice echoed through the lookout. Severe environmental hazard. Pause. Do not descend. Another pause. Do not remain. I frowned. That made no sense. Don't descend. Don't remain. Those were the only two options. The alarm repeated. Exactly the same wording. Then a third sentence I'd never heard before. Elevation is no longer protective. The power died. The tower fell silent. Only one light remained. A tiny battery-powered indicator above an old metal cabinet. Green. Blinking. I'd never noticed the cabinet before. It had been built into the wall beneath layers of dust. The lock was already open. Inside sat a sealed envelope. Across the front, someone had written in black marker. If Tower 8 activates, you are already late. My heartbeat accelerated. I broke the seal. Inside was a single folded page. Typed. No signature. No letterhead. Just instructions. If you are reading this, the observation boundary has failed. Do not attempt to identify the copies. They are no longer imitating appearances. They are collecting decisions. If you have already seen yourself, report immediately for cognitive evaluation. If your reflection has acted independently. The sentence ended there. The rest had been cut away. Not torn. Cut cleanly with a blade. Someone had deliberately removed the ending. Footsteps echoed below. Real footsteps. Wooden stairs. Someone was climbing. Slowly. One step. Pause. Another step. The lookout tower stood nearly 70 feet high. Old timber construction. Every footstep echoed. This wasn't imagination. Someone was coming up. I looked over the railing. Nobody. The staircase spiraled around the tower. I couldn't see the lower flights. Only hear them. Step. Pause. Step. Pause. They stopped one landing below. Silence. Then. A knock. 3 taps. Against the trapdoor. Knock. 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 Every muscle in my body locked. The same pattern. The truck. The cargo bed. 3 knocks. A calm voice drifted upward. Ryan? It was Dale. I'm coming up. No. Dale would never announce himself after 3 knocks. He'd identify himself immediately. Badge number. Call sign. Protocol. Instead. Open the hatch. I stayed silent. Another knock. 3 taps. Then Melissa's voice. We found you. Another pause. Then Gus. Son. His old gravelly drawl was unmistakable. It's cold out here. One by one. Every person I knew began speaking from beneath the hatch. None of them talked over each other. They took turns. Patient. Polite. Like they knew eventually I'd answer someone. Then. A voice I hadn't heard in 11 years. Ryan. My mother's voice. I felt the blood drain from my face. She died from pancreatic cancer while I was deployed overseas. I attended her funeral. I carried her casket. The voice below sounded exactly like her. You don't have to keep blaming yourself. I staggered backward. No. You couldn't have come home sooner. My breathing became uneven. Nobody at Yellowstone knew that. I'd never told anyone. Not Dale. Not Melissa. No one. The voice continued. I forgave you a long time ago. Tears burned my eyes before I realized what was happening. Whatever was beneath that hatch wasn't copying appearances anymore. It was copying memories. Private ones. The kind no file or personnel record could contain. Then my mother's voice whispered something that froze me completely. I know why you looked into the mirror. Silence. You wanted to know which one of you survived. The hatch handle moved. Not forced. Slowly. Carefully. Someone underneath was trying it. Locked. Another gentle rattle. Then it stopped. My radio crackled. A completely different frequency. One I'd never heard before. A woman's voice. Older. Calm. If you're hearing this. Static swallowed half the sentence. Do not let them convince you they remember more than you. More static. They only know what they've already taken. The signal faded. Then returned. If they begin telling you your future. The transmission dissolved into distortion. A final burst came through. Run before you believe them. Gone. The footsteps descended. Slowly. The voices disappeared. I waited another 10 minutes before opening the trapdoor. Nobody. No footprints. The stairs were covered in fresh dust. Untouched. As though no one had climbed them in years. I hurried down anyway. The duplicates below were gone. Every one of them. The clearing stood empty. Only the wind moved through the trees. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then I noticed something nailed to the driver's door of my truck. A ranger identification badge. Mine. Not a copy. Mine. The one attached to my uniform. I looked down. The badge clipped to my shirt was gone. In its place, a small folded note. 3 handwritten words. He switched first. I spun toward the forest. Nothing. No movement. No voices. No figures. Just endless trees. I climbed into the truck, locked every door, and started the engine. The dashboard clock flashed 12 o'clock. The calendar beneath it displayed a date 4 days in the future. Then, before my eyes, it corrected itself. Today's date returned. The engine kept running. But the odometer began spinning backward. 1 mile. Then another. Then another. Without the truck moving an inch. As I stared in disbelief, dispatch finally broke through the radio. Only it wasn't asking where I was. Dale's voice was tense. Urgent. Unit 12, respond immediately. I grabbed the microphone. Before I could answer, he said the one sentence I never expected to hear. Do not return to the ranger station. A burst of static. Then, someone who looks exactly like you already did. The radio hissed for nearly 10 seconds after Dale's warning. Then it went dead again. I kept staring at the microphone in my hand. There was only one explanation. Either Dale was lying, or someone had beaten me back to the station. Neither possibility made any sense. I checked my watch. 2:17 a.m. The truck's dashboard clock still insisted it was 12 o'clock. The GPS displayed no roads. Only a blank green screen with a blinking cursor. Then, without warning, it typed a message by itself. Don't follow your own tracks. 1 letter at a time. No keyboard input. No system prompt. Just words appearing on the screen. When the sentence finished, the GPS shut itself off. Military training teaches you to simplify impossible situations. Inventory. Resources. Objectives. I had a truck. Half a tank of fuel. A service pistol. A patrol rifle locked in the rear compartment. Emergency medical gear. Enough food for a day. No reliable communications. Objective? Survive until I could verify reality again. Simple. At least on paper. I started the truck and drove toward the nearest ranger station that wasn't my own. Bridge Bay. It was farther than going home, but if something wearing my face had reached my station first, I wasn't driving straight into it. The forest remained unnaturally quiet. No coyotes. No owls. No insects. Even the geothermal vents seemed subdued. Only the engine disturbed the silence. 20 minutes later, I found the first abandoned vehicle. A white SUV parked sideways across the road. Engine running. Driver's door open. No hazard lights. No people. Tourist luggage still inside. A child's stuffed bear sat buckled into the back seat. The headlights illuminated a coffee cup still steaming in the cup holder. Whoever had been driving hadn't left long ago. Protocol said I should investigate. Every instinct told me not to. I called out anyway. National Park Service! Nothing. I swept the area with my flashlight. Fresh footprints circled the SUV. One adult. One child. They led into the trees. Then, halfway to the tree line, they turned around. Not physically. The impressions simply reversed. The toes became heels. The heels became toes. As though the people had continued walking forward while the ground decided they'd been walking backward. I stopped following them immediately. Something about those tracks felt wrong. Not supernatural. Wrong. Like a sentence with one word out of place. Your brain knows something is off before you understand why. I backed away toward my truck. As I reached the driver's door, the SUV's radio switched on. A weather broadcast crackled through the speakers. Visibility excellent across all elevations. Pause. Avoid eye contact with approaching personnel until identity can be independently confirmed. Another pause. Today's sunrise has been delayed. The broadcast dissolved into static. There was no emergency alert tone. No station identification. No explanation. Just those three statements. I got back into my truck and drove. Fast. About 5 miles later, I saw headlights approaching. Finally. Another ranger. The green and white patrol truck rounded the bend and slowed beside me. Relief washed over me. Until I recognized the driver. Me. Not someone who looked similar. Me. Every detail was perfect. The tired eyes. The scar. The 3-day stubble I'd forgotten to shave. Even the coffee stain on my uniform sleeve from earlier that evening. He rolled down his window. So, he smiled. Which one of us got lost? I slammed the truck into reverse. He didn't chase me. He simply watched. Still smiling. Then he raised his radio. You should answer, Dale. My radio immediately crackled. Unit 12. Dale. Respond. The thing wearing my face never looked away from me. It spoke at exactly the same moment Dale's voice came through my speaker. Perfect synchronization. 2 mouths. 1 conversation. I accelerated backward until I could turn around. When I looked in the mirror, the other truck was gone. Not driving away. Gone. Empty road. Bridge Bay Ranger Station should have been staffed 24 hours a day. When I arrived, every light was on. Every vehicle was parked outside. The front door stood open. No one answered when I called. Inside, coffee still steamed in mugs. Computers remained logged in. A television displayed security camera feeds. One monitor showed the lobby. Empty. Another showed the garage. Empty. A third displayed the parking lot. I frowned. According to the camera, my truck wasn't outside. I looked through the window. It absolutely was. The monitor showed only empty pavement. I stepped back outside. Truck still there. Back inside. Gone on camera. I tested the theory. Walked into the parking lot. Returned. The security monitor never showed me. It continued displaying an empty lot. As though either my truck nor I existed. Then another screen changed by itself. Not a live camera. Archived footage. Timestamp. 2 hours earlier. The lobby filled with people. Dale entered first. Melissa behind him. Then, me. I watched myself walk through the front door, remove my hat, laugh at something Dale said, and sign the visitor log. The timestamp proved it happened 2 hours before I reached the station. I watched the duplicate shake everyone's hand. Smile naturally. Carry on conversations. No one reacted. No one suspected anything. Then the footage froze. The duplicate looked directly into the security camera. Into me. It smiled. The recording ended. I found the visitor log on the front desk. The last signature belonged to me. Today's date. Today's time. Perfect handwriting. Except, one detail caught my attention. After my name, someone had added 6 tiny dots. Almost invisible. Exactly 6. I turned the page. Previous weeks. Every few days. Another familiar name appeared with 6 tiny dots beside it. Melissa. Gus. Dale. Maintenance crews. Dispatchers. Some names appeared twice. Others 3 times. One former ranger's name filled nearly an entire page. Every signature followed by 6 dots. At the bottom, someone had written in red ink, "No longer original." A floorboard creaked upstairs. I wasn't alone. I drew my pistol. "National Park Service." No answer. The sound came again. One slow step. Then another. Whoever it was wasn't hiding. They wanted me to hear them. I climbed the stairs. The second floor held offices and temporary sleeping quarters. Every door stood open. Every room empty. Until I reached the records office. The light inside flickered. An elderly man sat behind a desk. Park uniform. Gray beard. Wire-rimmed glasses. He looked up as though he'd been expecting me. "You're late. I thought this station was evacuated." "It is." "Then who are you?" He smiled faintly. "I've asked myself that for 23 years. I didn't lower the pistol." "Name?" He hesitated. "Walter." "Last name?" "I used to know." He sounded genuinely frustrated. "I've forgotten whether it belonged to me." The answer should have sent me running. Instead, something about him felt real. Exhausted. Defeated. Not dangerous. He noticed me studying him. "You saw one of yourself." It wasn't a question. "How do you know?" "Because you're still checking reflections." I hadn't realized I was. Every window. Every shiny surface. Every dark computer monitor. He nodded knowingly. "They all do." "Who?" "The ones who still remember being first." My mouth went dry. "What does that mean?" Walter reached into a desk drawer and removed an old Polaroid photograph. He slid it across the desk. It showed 8 Yellowstone Rangers standing in front of this very station. The picture had yellowed with age. The uniforms looked decades old. One man stood in the center. Young. Confident. Smiling. Walter pointed to him. "That's me." I looked from the photograph to the old man. Impossible. The face matched perfectly. Just 40 years younger. "So you retired?" He laughed. A tired, humorless sound. "No." "What happened?" "I came back." I frowned. "From where?" He looked out the window toward the forest. "I wish I knew." Silence settled over the room. Finally he spoke again. "They tell everyone it's a wilderness." He shook his head. "It isn't." "What is it?" "It's a border." My grip tightened on the pistol. "A border to what?" Walter's eyes met mine. "I've never found the right words." He swallowed. "So I'll use the wrong ones." Outside. Every bird in the forest suddenly went silent. At once. Not one species. All of them. The silence hit like pressure inside my ears. Walter stood so abruptly his chair crashed backward. His face lost all color. "How long have they been singing?" What? The birds. I realized I couldn't remember hearing them all day. Walter whispered a curse under his breath. Then looked straight at me. Run. Why? His voice shook. Because if either of us remembers when they stopped. He looked toward the hallway as slow, deliberate footsteps echoed from the floor below. The footsteps downstairs weren't trying to be quiet. That was the first thing that bothered me. Anyone sneaking through an empty ranger station at night would avoid loose floorboards. These footsteps landed directly on them. Deliberate. Measured. As if whoever was coming up the stairs wanted us to know exactly where they were. Walter grabbed my arm. Back room. Now. He moved surprisingly fast for an old man. The records office had a narrow storage room behind a filing cabinet. He pulled the cabinet aside just enough for us to squeeze through. Inside, the space smelled like dust and old paper. Walter slid the cabinet back into place. The footsteps reached the second floor. Stopped. A drawer opened somewhere in the office. Then another. Metal scraped wood. Whoever it was had entered the records room. I kept my pistol trained on the crack between the cabinet and the wall. Walter leaned close to my ear. Don't speak. The drawer sounds continued. Patient. Unhurried. A page turned. Then another. As though someone was calmly reading personnel files. My radio suddenly crackled. I nearly jumped. Dale's voice came through loud and clear. Ryan, if you're at Bridge Bay, answer immediately. I reached for the microphone. Walter seized my wrist hard enough to hurt. His eyes widened. I realized something. The radio on my shoulder was switched off. I had turned it off when I entered the station. Yet Dale's voice was still coming through. Ryan. Pause. I know Walter found you. My blood went cold. Walter slowly shook his head. The voice continued. He told you about the border, didn't he? Another pause. Ask him what happened to his partner. Walter closed his eyes. The footsteps in the office stopped. Completely. The voice on the radio softened. He never tells that part. Silence. Then, from the office itself, a second voice spoke. Dale's voice. Same tone. Same cadence. Ryan? The radio answered from my shoulder at the exact same moment. Ryan? Two voices. One from the radio. One from the room outside. Perfectly synchronized. Walter mouthed, "Don't answer." The synchronized voices spoke again. Tell me something only the real Dale would know. I felt my chest tighten. That was exactly what a real person would say. The voice from the office chuckled. The radio chuckled with it. Then both said together, See? That's why this works. The filing cabinet moved. Not violently. Slowly. A fraction of an inch. Then another. Whoever was outside wasn't forcing it. They were being careful. The gap widened enough for me to see a Green Ranger sleeve. A hand rested on the cabinet edge. My hand. Same scar across the knuckles from a field dressing accident years earlier. Walter leaned close again. When it sees you panic, it learns faster. I whispered. What is it? His answer was almost inaudible. I don't think it's one thing. The cabinet stopped moving. My own face appeared in the gap. Calm. Relaxed. Looking directly at me. It smiled. Not the wide, unnatural grin I'd seen before. This looked exactly like a tired ranger trying to reassure a nervous coworker. There you are. Its voice was mine. You scared everybody. I kept the pistol trained on its forehead. It didn't react. Instead, it looked past me at Walter. Still hiding in filing rooms? Walter said nothing. The thing sighed. 23 years and you still think this helps? Then it looked back at me. Dale sent me. No. He's worried about you. No. It nodded slowly. Good. You're getting better. The thing stepped back from the cabinet. I heard it sit down at the desk. Papers rustled. Then, casually. You know what's funny, Ryan? Silence. It wasn't trying to become us. I exchanged a glance with Walter. The thing continued. We taught it. My stomach tightened. Every search party. Every radio call. Every missing person interview. A page turned. Thousands of voices. Thousands of memories. Another page. We kept bringing it pieces of ourselves. Then it said something that made Walter physically flinch. Ask him what the observation posts were built for. I looked at Walter. His face had gone pale. The thing in the office laughed softly. There it is. Silence. That's the expression he gets right before he lies. Walter finally spoke. Don't listen to it. The thing immediately replied. I agree. Same voice. Same timing. For a terrifying second I couldn't tell which speaker was real. Then it asked, Did he tell you the towers weren't for spotting fires? Walter whispered. Stop. Did he tell you why they were all built facing inward? I frowned. Inward? The thing continued. Not toward the wilderness. Toward the center. A cold feeling spread through my chest. I remembered the old map from Dale's meeting. The black X. The restricted zone. The towers surrounding it. Watching it. Walter suddenly grabbed my shoulder. We're leaving. We slipped out the back of the storage room and into a narrow maintenance hallway. The office behind us remained quiet. Too quiet. As we moved, I whispered, Tell me the truth. Walter kept walking. The observation towers were built after 1967. For what? To monitor movement. Wildlife? No. We reached a stairwell. He stopped and looked up toward the roof. People. I stared at him. What people? Walter swallowed. The ones who came back. The basement archives sat beneath the station. Most employees didn't know they existed. Walter led me through a locked utility door and down concrete steps. The air grew colder. The room below was packed with metal shelves and sealed boxes. Not ordinary records. Military-style storage. He opened one. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Rangers. Search teams. Tourists. Families. Many had dates spanning nearly 50 years. Some faces were circled in red. Others had the same 6 dots I'd seen in the visitor log. What am I looking at? Walter handed me a folder. The first page read, Yellowstone Cognitive Contamination Review. No agency seal. No signatures. Just typed reports. Subject Pierce Allen, Ranger Supervisor. Subject returned from restricted zone after 36 hours missing. Subject demonstrated knowledge of conversations never attended. Subject correctly identified future staffing assignments 48 hours before issuance. Subject requested immediate isolation. Isolation denied. Subject later disappeared during transport. I turned another page. Subject Grant Melissa, Ranger. Reports duplicated conversations and unverified memories. Monitoring recommended. Another page. Subject Mercer Dale, District Supervisor. Long-term exposure acknowledged. Retention considered stable. Continue field leadership unless escalation occurs. I looked up sharply. Dale knew. Walter nodded. They all know eventually. Then why are they still working? Because replacing everyone would expose the pattern. He closed the folder. So they monitor each other. A chill ran through me. How many people are involved? Walter didn't answer. That was answer enough. A metal door slammed somewhere upstairs. Both of us froze. Another slam. Closer. Then a voice echoed down the stairwell. Ryan? Dale. Real this time. At least I thought so. Walter's expression didn't change. The voice continued. I know you're in the archives. My pulse quickened. How does he know? Walter whispered. Because there are cameras. The voice called again. Listen carefully. If Walter is with you, do not let him leave the station. I looked at Walter. He shook his head. The voice continued. He wasn't missing for 23 years. Silence. He was missing for 3. Walter closed his eyes. The voice came again. Ask him why every photograph of him is older than he is. I turned toward Walter. For the first time since meeting him, he looked afraid. Not of the voice. Of the question. The stairwell creaked. Someone was descending. Slowly. Deliberately. One step at a time. Then the voice changed. Still Dale. But softer. Almost sympathetic. Ryan. Another step. I need you to understand something before you see him clearly. Walter backed away from the stairs. The voice reached the bottom landing. A shadow stretched across the archive floor. Then Dale said the sentence that made my blood run cold. The man standing next to you. A pause. Darkness has a sound. Most people don't realize that until every source of light disappears at once. The fluorescent hum vanished. The computers died. The emergency exit signs blinked out. Even the wind outside seemed to stop breathing. For one impossible second, the records office became so quiet I could hear Walter's heartbeat. Not metaphorically. Literally. A slow, uneven thump somewhere to my left. Then, another heartbeat answered from somewhere to my right. Walter heard it too. Don't move. I stayed perfectly still. The second heartbeat continued. Not faster. Not louder. Closer. As if someone else was standing inside the room with us. Someone neither of us had seen when the lights went out. Walter whispered. Count. What? In your head. I frowned. Why? Because if it starts counting with you. He never finished. The second heartbeat stopped. Then my own voice spoke from the darkness. 3. I hadn't been counting out loud. I hadn't made a sound. Walter grabbed my sleeve so suddenly I nearly fired my pistol. Out the window. We're on the 2nd floor. I know. What about? The stairs are gone. I turned toward the office door. He was right. Moonlight from the hallway windows should have outlined the staircase beyond the doorway. Instead, there was only more office. More filing cabinets. More walls. The hallway had stretched. Not physically. Logically. The door no longer opened onto the hallway. It opened into another records office. Identical. Same desks. Same cabinets. Same scattered photographs. Except, in the far corner of that impossible room stood 2 figures. Walter. And me. Watching us. Either of them moved. Either of them blinked. Walter quietly pulled me away from the doorway. Never look at the next room for longer than 3 seconds. Why? Because eventually. His voice trembled. You'll realize one of them looked back first. I forced myself to look away. My pulse hammered in my ears. This wasn't imitation anymore. It wasn't copies. It wasn't voices. The building itself had stopped obeying reality. Walter kicked out the office window with surprising strength. Glass exploded into the night. The drop looked close to 20 feet. Jump! What about you? I've done this before. That answer somehow terrified me more. I climbed through the frame. Cold air hit my face. For the first time in hours, I heard the forest again. Wind. Branches. Distant water. Normal sounds. I jumped. The landing knocked the breath out of me. Pain shot through my ankle. Behind me, Walter hit the ground harder but managed to stay on his feet. Truck. We sprinted across the parking lot. Halfway there, I stopped. Every patrol vehicle had the same unit number. 12. Mine. Every license plate matched mine. Every windshield contained the same coffee stain. Every truck had the same dent in the rear bumper from where I'd clipped a fallen log months earlier. 20 identical patrol trucks. Walter didn't even slow down. Don't inspect them. They're all. I know. How? Because they always are. He reached one truck, yanked the driver's door open, looked inside for exactly 1 second, and slammed it shut. Not this one. He moved to the next. Opened. Closed. Third. Fourth. Fifth. Finally, at the sixth truck, he nodded. This one. What makes it different? He looked at me. You'll understand later. I understand nothing. Exactly. We climbed inside. The engine started immediately. No key. Walter pulled away from the station without turning on the headlights. You know where you're going? No. Then why are we driving? Because staying still helps them. Them? He didn't answer. For several miles neither of us spoke. The road remained empty. Eventually I broke the silence. What is Yellowstone really? Walter kept his eyes on the road. It isn't Yellowstone. What? The park is real. He nodded toward the forest. That isn't. I waited. When the government created the park, they thought they were protecting wilderness. He gave a dry laugh. They were building a fence. A fence around what? He hesitated. I don't think around is the right word. The truck rounded a bend. Ahead, a herd of elk stood in the middle of the highway. Hundreds of them. Perfectly still. Facing us. None attempted to move. Walter slowed but didn't stop. They're waiting. For us? No. For permission. Permission from who? He whispered one word. The watcher. The elk stepped aside simultaneously. Not frightened. Not startled. Simply making room. Walter drove through. Every animal turned its head in perfect synchronization as we passed. Watching. Not the truck. Me. You've heard stories about people disappearing in national parks. I nodded. Most people assume they die. They don't? Some do. And the others? Walter's grip tightened on the steering wheel. They cross. Cross where? The line. What line? He sighed. You keep imagining a place. Isn't it? No. He looked at me. It's a decision. That sentence sat in the cab like poison. What does that even mean? You've already crossed it once. The night the road disappeared? No. When? He looked genuinely confused. I thought you'd figured it out. My stomach dropped. Figured what out? Walter was quiet for almost a full minute. Finally he asked. Ryan. What? What's the last thing you remember before becoming a Yellowstone Ranger? I frowned. My discharge from the army. And then? I applied. And then? I interviewed. And then? Training. Walter shook his head. No. What do you mean? You skipped something. I didn't. You did. I searched my memory. Army discharge. Apartment. Applications. Orientation. Patrols. It all seemed compressed. Like pages torn from the middle of a book. There was. I struggled to remember. There was a drive. To Wyoming. I think. Walter nodded slowly. What happened on the drive? I opened my mouth. Nothing. No memory. No highway. No motel. No gas stations. Nothing. Just arrival. A cold sensation spread through my chest. I don't remember. Walter closed his eyes briefly. None of us do. The truck radio switched on by itself. Not static. A recording. Old. Crackling. This is Chief Ranger Alan Pierce. Walter slammed the brakes. The truck skidded sideways across the road. What? His face had gone pale. That recording shouldn't exist. Alan Pierce's voice continued. If anyone receives this transmission. Static. Do not allow the replacement to reach Mammoth. Walter stared at the radio. No. There is no creature. More static. The copies are not the threat. I leaned closer. The recording cleared for just a moment. The originals are. Silence. The radio clicked off. Either of us spoke. Finally I whispered. What did he mean? Walter looked older than ever. I prayed we'd never hear that. Answer me. He swallowed. If Pierce was right. He couldn't finish. If he was right, what? Walter slowly turned toward me. Then everything we've been protecting. He looked out into the forest. Has been protecting everyone else from us. The truck's headlights flickered. Something stood in the road ahead. One figure. Park uniform. Flat hat. Hands behind its back. Walter whispered, "Don't get out." The figure raised its head. It wasn't wearing my face. It was wearing Walter's. 40 years younger. Exactly like the photograph. The young Walter smiled. Then calmly walked toward our truck. He stopped inches from the hood. Raised one hand. And held up an old Ranger badge. Walter's Ranger badge. The one hanging around the old man's neck. I looked at Walter. His badge was gone. The younger version smiled wider. Then, in Walter's own voice, it asked the question that shattered everything I thought I understood. The question hung in the air long after the younger Walter stopped speaking. Neither of us answered. The old man beside me wasn't breathing. He stared through the windshield like someone looking at his own grave. The younger Walter waited. Patiently. No threats. No movement. Just waiting. Then he smiled. "You still assume time happened the same way for both of us?" Old Walter finally whispered. "Drive." I didn't move. "Ryan." His voice cracked. "Drive." The younger Walter placed one hand against the hood of the truck. "You know he's lying to you." Old Walter shut his eyes. "Drive." The younger version laughed. "I remember when I said exactly that." I slammed the accelerator. The truck lurched forward. For one impossible second, I thought we were going to hit him. Instead, the truck passed through him. Not like a ghost. Like driving through cold water. The windshield frosted instantly. Every light on the dashboard went dark. The engine died. Then everything came back. The truck was still moving. The road was gone. We rolled to a stop in a meadow I had never seen before. No road. No tire tracks. No radio towers. No signs. Nothing but waist-high grass swaying beneath a sky that didn't look right. The stars were wrong. Not brighter. Wrong. Constellations I'd spent years recognizing in the backcountry were missing. Others existed where empty sky should have been. The moon. There were two of them. One full. One only a faint gray outline. Neither cast a shadow. I looked at Walter. He wasn't surprised. We crossed. My throat tightened. "The boundary?" He nodded. "No." He looked out across the field. "The argument." "What?" He gave a tired smile. "You've been thinking there's one Yellowstone." He shook his head. "There never was." At the center of the meadow stood an old ranger station. Except, it wasn't abandoned. It looked new. Fresh paint. Unfaded signs. Vehicles parked outside. An American flag waving gently in the breeze. Everything looked exactly as Yellowstone stations appeared in official brochures. Only one detail was wrong. The flag had too many stars. I counted twice. 52. I blinked. It became 50. Blink again. 51. Every time I looked away and back, the number changed. Walter refused to look at it. "Don't count." "Why?" "Because eventually." He swallowed. "It'll count you." The front door opened before we reached it. A woman in a chief ranger uniform stepped outside. Late 50s. Silver hair. Professional posture. Her nameplate read, Evelyn Shaw. She smiled with obvious relief. "There you are." Walter froze. "No." She looked at him sadly. "You always say that." Then she turned to me. "You've been missing for 11 days. I laughed. "No." She didn't. "We've had search teams looking for both of you." Walter whispered. "Don't believe her." Chief Shaw ignored him. "Ryan." She spoke gently. "What's the last date you remember?" I answered automatically. "October 12th. Her expression changed. "I'm sorry." For what? She handed me a folded newspaper. The date on the front read October 23rd. 11 days. Exactly as she'd said? No. I checked my watch. Still October 12th. Walter quietly said. Don't. I looked closer at the paper. The headline wasn't about us. It was about Yellowstone National Park closed indefinitely after mass staff disappearance. My pulse quickened. The article listed dozens of missing employees. I recognized almost every name. Dale. Melissa. Gus. Dispatch. Maintenance crews. Entire search and rescue teams. All gone. Then I saw my own photograph. Ranger Ryan Carter presumed dead. I dropped the newspaper. Chief Shaw stepped closer. This is the side they don't want you to see. Walter grabbed my shoulder. This isn't your world. She sighed. You still believe that? Walter glared at her. You made him forget. Chief Shaw looked genuinely offended. No. She looked at me. You did. She led us inside. Against Walter's protests. The station looked normal. Too normal. Coffee brewing. Phones ringing. Maps on the walls. Employees working. Everyone smiled politely. No one stared. No one acted strangely. One ranger walked past and nodded. Morning, Ryan. I frowned. You know me? He laughed. We've worked together for 3 years. Walter pulled me aside. Don't answer anyone. I lowered my voice. Why? Because every conversation strengthens the version they know. Chief Shaw overheard him. He's still teaching survival rules. She sounded almost sympathetic. They stopped working years ago. Walter snapped back. They're still alive because of them. Chief Shaw met his eyes. No. They're trapped because of them. She opened a secure office. Inside hung dozens of framed photographs. Every one showed Yellowstone's staff through different decades. The same faces appeared over and over. Not descendants. The exact same people. Dale. Melissa. Walter. Even me. My breath caught. One photograph dated 1987 showed me standing beside a fire engine. Same face. Same age. Same scar. Impossible. Walter looked away. I told you not to look. Chief Shaw removed the frame and handed it to me. The back contained handwritten notes. Iteration 14. Below that. Subject continues retaining partial continuity between resets. I stared at her. What does iteration 14 mean? She answered quietly. It means this isn't your first Yellowstone. The room suddenly felt smaller. I don't understand. I know. She leaned against the desk. Neither did we. We? The first people. Walter interrupted. Don't. She ignored him. Yellowstone wasn't chosen because of what was here. She pointed toward the window. It was chosen because of what kept happening. What happened? She took a long breath. The park doesn't repeat time. She paused. It repeats people. I felt sick. What does that mean? It means every time someone crosses the boundary. She looked directly into my eyes. The park tries again. Again? To make a version that stays. Walter whispered. Enough. She continued anyway. Some versions disappear. Some return. Some remember. And a few. She looked at me with unmistakable sadness. Begin remembering every version. My head started pounding. Flashes of places I'd never visited erupted behind my eyes. A snow-covered canyon. A fire tower collapsing. Running through thermal fog. A child asking me why I kept dying. A woman handing me a black binder. A radio transmission ending with the words, Rule 6 was wrong. I staggered backward. Walter caught me. No. But it was too late. More memories crashed into me. Dozens. Hundreds. Different patrols. Different years. Different deaths. Always Yellowstone. Always ending before I reached the northern boundary. Always beginning again. I looked at my own hands. They suddenly felt unfamiliar. Chief Shaw spoke softly. "You're remembering." Walter closed his eyes. "That's exactly what they wanted." An alarm suddenly echoed through the station. Not loud. One clear tone. Everyone inside froze. Every employee. Every visitor. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Chief Shaw looked toward the ceiling. Her face strained of color. "No," Walter whispered. "They found us." I looked between them. "Who?" Mather answered. Then every person inside the station slowly turned toward the front entrance. At exactly the same moment. As one. The glass doors slid open. Someone walked inside. Not wearing a ranger uniform. Not wearing government credentials. Just an ordinary hiking backpack. Ordinary boots. Ordinary clothes. A tourist. Except. Every person in the station immediately stepped backward. Chief Shaw whispered a single sentence. "The original found this iteration." The tourist removed his sunglasses. Looked directly at me. Smiled. Then said something that made every previous revelation feel insignificant. The station fell completely silent. Not the uneasy silence I'd grown used to. This was different. Every person in the room had stopped breathing. The fluorescent lights hummed. A coffee machine gurgled somewhere behind the reception desk. No one moved. The tourist smiled as if he'd walked into a reunion. He looked completely ordinary. Mid-30s. Average height. Sun-faded hiking clothes. A cheap backpack with a faded national park patch sewn onto the side. The kind of visitor I'd walked past 100 times without remembering. That was the first thing that frightened me. Nothing about him demanded attention. Yet every ranger in the building instinctively stepped away from him. Even Chief Shaw. Even Walter. He looked at me. "I've been looking for you." My mouth had gone dry. "Who are you?" He tilted his head. "I've answered that question before. I've never met you." His smile widened. "No." He looked almost disappointed. "This version hasn't." Walter quietly positioned himself between us. "Don't answer anything." The tourist chuckled. "You still think silence works?" Walter didn't respond. The tourist sighed. "You've become predictable." He turned back to me. "My name doesn't matter. What matters," he tapped his own temple, "is which memories survived." I frowned. "You called yourself the original." "I didn't." "You did." "No." He smiled patiently. "I said they call me that." "Who's they?" He glanced around the room. "Everyone who's forgotten." Chief Shaw stepped forward. "You shouldn't be here." The tourist looked genuinely confused. "Neither should any of you." He slowly walked farther into the station. Nobody tried to stop him. As he passed the reception desk, every computer monitor shut off. One by one. Then restarted. Every screen displayed the same live security camera. Not the station. The Mammoth Hot Springs entrance. Empty. Except for one person. Me. Standing perfectly still at the gate. Timestamp. Live. I looked from the monitor. To my own hands. To Walter. Walter whispered. "Don't." The tourist nodded toward the screens. "He's catching up." A sharp pain exploded behind my eyes. Not a headache. A memory. I was standing at the Mammoth entrance. Snow covered the road. Dale stood beside me. Older. Tired. He handed me the black binder. Not the first time. Not the second. The 100th. He looked me straight in the eyes. "If this doesn't work..." He couldn't finish. I heard myself answer. "It won't." Then the memory vanished. I staggered backward. The tourist watched calmly. "There." He smiled. "Now you're remembering the failures." Walter looked horrified. "He shouldn't have that many," Chief Shaw quietly said. "It's accelerating." The tourist nodded. Because the loop is collapsing. I looked at him. What loop? He pointed toward the window. The one you've mistaken for time. Without warning. The ground shook. Not an earthquake. Something deeper. The walls groaned. Picture frames crashed to the floor. Outside, every bird in the valley exploded into flight. Thousands of them. Circling in complete silence. No calls. No wing beats. Just movement. The tourist finally looked worried. It woke up. Walter whispered. No. Chief Shaw closed her eyes. We're too late. The lights failed. Emergency generators kicked on. Red lights flooded the station. Exactly like the night Dale opened the black binder. Only now, I understood why. The lights weren't warning us. They were warning something else. The tourist looked directly at me. Listen carefully. This is the last time you'll hear this as yourself. My pulse hammered. What are you talking about? He ignored the question. The rules were never written to protect people. Walter shouted. Stop! The tourist continued. They were written to slow you. Everything seemed to stop. Even my breathing. He took another step. You've been asking the wrong question. What question? What is Yellowstone? He shook his head. The real question is. He looked directly into my eyes. Why does it keep rebuilding you? The memory hit so violently I collapsed. Not fragments. Everything. A mountain. Darkness beneath it. Not a cave. Not a tunnel. A wound. Something impossible pressing against reality from the other side. Not alive. Not dead. Watching. Always watching. The first explorers. Then soldiers. Then surveyors. Then scientists. Every group reached the same conclusion. You couldn't destroy it. You couldn't move it. You couldn't understand it. So they built something around it. A park. Trails. Visitor centers. Ranger stations. Not to hide the place. To create witnesses. Generation after generation. People who could recognize when reality began slipping. Except, the witnesses never stayed themselves for long. I gasped. Oh my God! The tourist nodded sadly. Now you remember. Walter looked like he wanted to deny it. But he couldn't. Chief Shaw lowered her eyes. The tourist spoke quietly. The copies weren't replacing people. He looked around the room. They were replacing memories. Outside. The sky split. No explosion. No lightning. The stars moved. Every constellation drifted several degrees across the sky at once. The second moon became visible again. Closer now. Far too close. It wasn't a moon. It never had been. It was an eye. Large enough to eclipse half the horizon. Looking directly at Yellowstone. At us. Everyone in the station instinctively looked away. Everyone except me. I couldn't. Because somewhere deep inside, I recognized it. It had watched me before. Hundreds of times. Thousands. Every iteration. Every death. Every beginning. Always watching. Always waiting to see whether I'd remember. The tourist slowly removed something from his backpack. Not a weapon. The black binder. The original one. Older. Water damaged. Held together with faded tape. He handed it to me. This one still has every page. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first 5 rules were familiar. Rule 6 wasn't. Neither were rules 7, 8, 9. The pages kept going. Dozens of rules. Hundreds. Each crossed out. Rewritten. Updated. Failed. At the very end. One final page remained. No title. No number. Only a handwritten sentence. The handwriting was mine. When you finally remember everything, do not let me reach the mountain. I stared at it. I wrote this. The tourist nodded. You always do. Then I understood. Not everything. Just enough. I looked up at the tourist. You're not the original. He smiled. No. I turned toward Walter. Neither are you. No. Chief Shaw quietly shook her head. No. I looked at my own reflection in a dark office window. It smiled a fraction of a second after I did. Not before. After. Like it was waiting for permission. The realization landed with crushing certainty. There had never been an original. Only the latest person to remember enough to think they were one. The station began coming apart. Not collapsing. Separating. Hallways unfolded into forests. Office doors opened onto cliffs. Windows looked into different seasons. Snow beyond one. Summer beyond another. Autumn behind a third. The boundaries between iterations were dissolving. Walter grabbed my arm. We have to reach the northern boundary. Why? Before he could answer, the tourist did. Because that's where you always decide. He smiled sadly. And eventually. He looked straight into my eyes. The station no longer existed by the time we reached the parking lot. Not all at once. It simply stopped agreeing with itself. The front entrance still opened onto the driveway. The rear exit opened into a snow-covered canyon. One hallway led back to the lobby. Another led into a ranger station that had burned decades ago. Every door belonged to a different Yellowstone. Every window showed a different sky. Walter refused to look at any of them. Keep your eyes on the ground. I did. Mostly. But once. Only once. I glanced into a window. I saw myself. Older. Gray-haired. Standing alone in an empty watchtower. He looked directly at me. Then slowly shook his head. As if warning me not to continue. The window was empty when I looked back. We reached the truck. Or a truck. At this point I wasn't sure the distinction mattered. Walter climbed into the passenger seat. The tourist never followed. He remained standing in front of the station. Watching. Almost sadly. Before I started the engine, he called out one last time. Ryan. I looked up. Don't make the same promise again. What promise? He smiled. The one you never remember keeping. Then he closed his eyes. When I opened mine after a single blink, the station was gone. Only forest remained. The drive north felt impossibly short. Roads folded into one another. Miles disappeared. Landmarks repeated. Twice we passed the same herd of elk. Once we crossed the same bridge 3 different times from opposite directions. The dashboard clock never moved from 12 o'clock. But dawn slowly brightened the eastern sky. Or maybe it was sunset. The colors looked wrong. Too many shades of green. Too little blue. Walter finally broke the silence. I've lied to you. I laughed. You're going to have to narrow that down. He nodded. I wasn't trapped here 23 years. I kept driving. How long? He stared out the windshield. I stopped counting after the first century. I nearly drove off the road. He didn't react. Time isn't passing the way you think. I know that. No. He looked at me. You don't. We reached the northern boundary just as fog began rolling through the trees. Not geothermal steam. This fog moved with purpose. Against the wind. Rule 5. Never remain near a thermal basin after midnight if the steam begins moving against the wind. I finally understood. The rules hadn't been random. They had been symptoms. Tiny warning signs that the boundary was thinning. Ahead, the road ended at a rusted gate I'd never seen before. No signs. No maps. No official records. Just an old chain stretched between 2 weathered posts. Beyond it. Nothing. Not darkness. Not forest. An absence. Like someone had cut a piece out of the world. The eye in the sky remained fixed above it. Watching. Waiting. Walter whispered. This is where every version reaches the same moment. The black binder sat on the dashboard. I opened to the final page again. The handwriting was unmistakably mine. When you finally remember everything, do not let me reach the mountain. Only now. Another line slowly appeared beneath it. Ink spread across the paper by itself, as if someone invisible were writing while I watched. You never listen. The truck radio activated. No static. Just Dale. Calm. Tired. Exactly as I'd always known him. Ryan. I closed my eyes. I'm here. I know. Is this really you? A long silence. Then, I honestly don't know anymore. Somehow, that answer convinced me more than any reassurance could have. He continued. I found the original contingency files. So did I. No. His voice sounded distant. I mean the first ones. I waited. They aren't instructions. What are they? They're apologies. Walter quietly stepped out of the truck. He walked toward the gate. Stopped. Never crossed it. I can't. Why? I already did. He smiled weakly. I've been trying to stop myself ever since. I got out. The air beyond the gate felt empty. No birds. No insects. No wind. Even my own breathing sounded muffled. Then, someone emerged from the fog. Not the tourist. Not Walter. Not Dale. Me. Older. Maybe 60. Gray at the temples. A scar across my chin I'd never received. He carried the same black binder. He looked exhausted. I was hoping you'd turn around this time. I couldn't speak. He nodded. I know. He looked at Walter. You stayed longer than usual. Walter gave a tired shrug. I had help. The older version of me laughed quietly. It never changes. He handed me a ranger badge. Old. Scratched. The name had nearly worn away. Ryan Carter. Badge number 000001. I frowned. My badge isn't numbered like this. It wasn't. He looked toward the mountain hidden behind the fog. This one belonged to the first ranger. The first ranger. He smiled. Named Ryan. I still don't understand. I know. He looked genuinely sympathetic. You never will. Then why keep trying? His answer came immediately. Because eventually. He glanced toward the impossible eye hanging above the valley. One of us has to be here when it stops watching. I followed his gaze. The eye blinked. The entire park blinked with it. For a fraction of a second. Everything disappeared. The trees. The road. Walter. The truck. The mountain. Even the sky. Only the eye remained. Floating in endless darkness. Looking directly at me. Not with hunger. Not with hatred. With curiosity. Like a scientist watching the same experiment repeated over and over. Then reality returned. The older version of me sighed. It's almost time. For what? For you to decide. What decision? He smiled sadly. The one none of us remembers making. The binder in my hands grew heavier. Its pages began turning by themselves. Every version of the rules. Every failed contingency. Every name. Every photograph. Thousands. Then millions. The final page stopped turning. Blank. A pen rested across it. Waiting. The older me stepped aside. The fog beyond the gate parted. I couldn't see what lay ahead. Only the outline of something impossibly large beneath the mountain. Not moving. Sleeping. Or pretending to. Walter quietly said. If you cross. He couldn't finish. The older me completed the sentence. Someone always comes back. I wish I could tell you what I chose. I wish I could tell you whether I crossed the gate. Whether I wrote something on that final page. Whether the thing beneath the mountain ever opened its eye completely. I can't. Because that's where my memory ends. Not fades. Ends. Like a film reel burned through the projector. The next thing I remember. I was sitting in my patrol truck outside Mammoth Ranger Station. Coffee in the cup holder. Morning briefing in 5 minutes. October 12th. Exactly where this all began. My radio crackled. Dale's voice. Morning, Ryan? I answered automatically. Morning. You ready? For what? A pause. Long enough to make my stomach tighten. Then he said, We've got a new transfer coming in today. I looked through the windshield. A young ranger stepped out of a government SUV. Late 20s. Athletic build. Army haircut. He looked nervous. He looked familiar. Too familiar. When he turned toward me, he had my face. Not older. Not younger. Exactly mine. He smiled politely and walked over. You must be Ryan. I couldn't answer. He extended his hand. My name's Alan Pierce. Before I could react, every radio in every vehicle across the parking lot transmitted the same whispered sentence. Not shouted. Not distorted. Almost gentle. Rule 6 was wrong. The transmission ended. Every radio fell silent. And somewhere deep beneath Yellowstone, something knocked.